Philippines is reporting erratic movement for the largest of China's Coast Guard vessels. The ship was spotted about 77 nautical miles off the northwestern province of Zambales.
You do not possess any legal authority to patrol within the Philippines exclusive economic zone. You are directed to depart immediately.
What happens when the Philippines' mightiest Coast Guard vessel challenges China's largest patrol ship in its own waters? The world is watching, tensions are rising, and the fight for sovereignty is more critical than ever. The South China Sea tensions surged to new heights on Tuesday when China deployed its massive Coast Guard vessel, the 12,000-ton monster ship, CCG 5901, near Scarborough Shoal, sparking outrage from the Philippines. Manila accused Beijing of intimidating its fishermen and attempting to normalize an illegal presence within its exclusive economic zone, EEZ. This bold move came just weeks after another tense standoff involving the BRP Teresa Magbanua, the Philippines' largest and most advanced Coast Guard vessel, as both nations continue to clash in these resource-rich and strategically vital waters.
I'm performing law enforcement duties on the jurisdictional waters of the People's Republic of China.
At the heart of this escalating conflict lies the Scarborough Shoal, located near Zambales province, a critical maritime gateway in the South China Sea. The shoal, brimming with natural resources and immense strategic importance, has become a flashpoint of growing hostility between the two nations. On one side stands the BRP Teresa Magbanua, a 97-meter vessel symbolizing the Philippines' growing resolve to defend its maritime sovereignty.
You are advised that you are currently sailing within the Philippine exclusive economic zone, approximately 97 nautical miles, west by south of Capones Point, Zambales, Philippines, in accordance with Republic Act 12064.
On the other looms the China Coast Guard 5901, whose colossal size and aggressive maneuvers have made it a notorious tool in Beijing's coercive strategy. These recent confrontations underscore a dangerous power struggle, with both nations unwilling to back down in the face of rising tensions in one of the world's most contested waterways. The Philippines and China are once again at odds over territorial disputes in the South China Sea, with two recent incidents near Scarborough Shoal highlighting rising tensions. In early October, the BRP Teresa Magbanua, a Philippine Coast Guard vessel, was conducting a routine patrol within Manila's exclusive economic zone, EEZ, near Scarborough Shoal. During this mission, the Chinese Coast Guard's massive 5901 vessel engaged in aggressive maneuvers, attempting to block the Philippine ship's path. Despite the intimidation, the BRP Teresa Magbanua held its course and issued a direct radio warning. This is BRP Teresa Magbanua. You are within the Philippine exclusive economic zone. Cease your aggressive actions and leave immediately.
We are reminding you that you are within 57 nautical miles west of Capones Point, Zambales, inside the Philippine exclusive economic zone. Please leave this area immediately. Over.
The Chinese vessel continued its blockade, forcing the Philippine vessel to adjust its course while remaining on patrol. Then, on Tuesday, the Philippines accused China of intimidating its fishermen near Scarborough Shoal and attempting to normalize an illegal presence in Manila's maritime zone. This came after Beijing deployed its largest Coast Guard vessel, further escalating tensions. The Philippine government condemned the move as part of a broader pattern of harassment aimed at undermining its sovereign rights in the region. These back-to-back incidents reflect Manila's determination to assert its maritime rights, despite Beijing's increasingly aggressive tactics in the South China Sea. The Philippines swiftly condemned China's actions. Jonathan Malaya, spokesperson for the National Security Council, labeled the Chinese deployment as illegal and unacceptable. Malaya further emphasized the threat posed by the monster ship to the livelihoods of Filipino fishermen. He stated, "It is a clear attempt to intimidate our fishermen and deprive them of their legitimate livelihood."
The presence of the monster ship in our waters is illegal and inconsistent with the exercise of freedom of navigation and innocent passage. It is clearly a provocative act. It is also a clear attempt to intimidate our fishermen and deprive them of their legitimate livelihood. It is, in short, an intimidation tactic used by the PRC to break the spirits of our fisherfolk and discourage them from fishing in the West Philippine Sea.
The Philippines responded by filing a diplomatic protest, underscoring the need for China to withdraw its vessel from the region. China's response came through its embassy in Manila, reiterating its claim over the Scarborough Shoal, which it refers to as Huangyandao. The embassy defended its actions, stating that they were fully justified and in full accordance with the law. China has consistently asserted its sovereignty over nearly all of the South China Sea, including areas within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, based on historical claims in the so-called 9-dash line. The Scarborough Shoal has been a focal point of tension since 2012, when China seized control of the area following a standoff with the Philippines. Since then, China has maintained a consistent Coast Guard presence, but recent developments are particularly alarming as Chinese vessels have increasingly moved closer to the Philippine coast. This shift represents not only an intensification of China's territorial ambitions, but also a direct challenge to the Philippines' ability to defend its maritime boundaries.
The China Coast Guard vessel 5901.
In response to the escalating threat, the Philippine Coast Guard deployed two of its largest vessels, the BRP Sikap and BRP Bagwis, to the area to counter China's monster ship. The deployment was described as a tactical move to assert Philippine maritime rights and to drive away Chinese vessels from the disputed region. The Philippine Coast Guard emphasized that the actions by China represented an attempt to normalize the illegal presence of foreign vessels within the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone. This latest confrontation is a significant escalation in the long-running South China Sea dispute, highlighting the complex and dangerous dynamics at play. For the Philippines, a close ally of the United States under the Mutual Defense Treaty, MDT, standing up to China's maritime assertiveness is not only about protecting its sovereignty, but also about sending a message to the international community about the importance of defending freedom of navigation and adherence to international law. The Philippines' firm stance underscores the growing tensions between the U.S. and China, particularly over the strategic waterways of the South China Sea, which serve as a critical trade route for billions of dollars worth of goods. The region is home to not only vital shipping lanes, but also potentially untapped resources like oil and natural gas, further intensifying the geopolitical stakes. The Philippine government has condemned China's deployment of its largest Coast Guard vessel, the 541 feet long monster ship, within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. National Security Council spokesperson Jonathan Malaya highlighted that this action was provocative and aimed at intimidating Filipino fishermen. He also reaffirmed that the Philippines had lodged a formal diplomatic protest, demanding the immediate withdrawal of China's Coast Guard vessel.
The presence of the monster ship 77 nautical miles off Capones Island in Zambales is clearly not acceptable. But since we have mechanisms, diplomatic mechanisms with the PRC, we will utilize all of those diplomatic mechanisms. No? I was told by the Department of Foreign Affairs that they will raise this matter. They have already issued a diplomatic protest against the presence of the monster ship, and that they will exhaust diplomatic efforts to also relay this message to the PRC that the presence of the monster ship is illegal and unacceptable to the Philippine government.
The situation underscores broader concerns about China's growing maritime presence in contested waters. The Philippines, along with other Southeast Asian nations, has repeatedly accused China of using its Coast Guard and maritime militia to harass and intimidate vessels from rival claimants. These actions are seen as part of China's broader strategy to assert its dominance over the South China Sea, which is claimed by several countries, including Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Taiwan. The South China Sea remains one of the most complex and volatile regions in the world. Multiple countries claim parts of the sea, with China asserting its claim over nearly the entire body of water, based on its historical 9-dash line. This has led to repeated tensions with neighboring countries that also have competing claims, most notably the Philippines and Vietnam. The situation is further complicated by the region's vital economic and strategic importance. The South China Sea serves as a key maritime route with more than $11 trillion worth of global trade passing through it each year. This makes the South China Sea a critical point of conflict not only for the claimant nations, but also for global powers that rely on the free flow of trade. In response to Manila's protests, China's foreign ministry issued a strong defense of its actions. Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun reaffirmed China's sovereignty over the South China Sea, claiming that its patrols and activities are entirely lawful and consistent with Chinese law. According to China, the presence of its Coast Guard vessels is a legitimate exercise of its rights to safeguard its territorial integrity and maritime interests.
中国在南海的主权和相关权利是在长期的历史过程中形成的，具有充分的历史和法理依据，符合国际法和国际实践。中国海警在相关海域巡航执法，合理合法，无可非议。中方敦促菲方停止恶意炒作。
China's response highlights the challenge faced by the Philippines and other Southeast Asian nations in asserting their claims in the face of China's military and diplomatic might. Beijing has shown little willingness to compromise on its territorial assertions, despite growing international pressure to adhere to international law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. The U.S. has been closely monitoring the situation in the South China Sea and has made it clear that it stands with the Philippines. As part of the Mutual Defense Treaty, the U.S. is obligated to assist the Philippines in the event of an armed attack, including in the South China Sea. The presence of the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group in the region, which includes the USS Princeton, CG-59, a guided missile cruiser, and the USS Kidd, DDG-100, and USS Sterett, DDG-104, both destroyers, sends a strong signal of American support for its ally. The U.S. has emphasized that any attack on Philippine vessels would trigger the MDT, and Washington has reaffirmed its commitment to protecting freedom of navigation in the South China Sea.
Mutual Defense Treaty applies to armed attacks on our armed forces, Coast Guard vessels, public vessels, or aircraft in the Pacific, including anywhere in the South China Sea. So make no mistake, Mr. President, we will always have your back in the South China Sea or elsewhere in the region.
This strengthened U.S. military presence is intended to deter further aggressive actions by China and ensure that the region remains open and accessible to all nations. The standoff between the BRP Teresa Magbanua and China's monster ship is a clear reminder of the critical importance of sovereignty, international law, and regional stability. The Philippines has shown remarkable courage in standing firm against a global superpower bolstered by a growing international coalition that supports its right to defend its maritime boundaries.
Good morning. 你好。知道好。来这里2天了。
This confrontation is more than just a bilateral issue between the Philippines and China. It is a global concern that raises questions about the future of maritime security, the role of international law, and the rights of smaller nations to defend their territories against larger, more powerful adversaries. The world must take note. This isn't just a fight for the Philippines. It is a fight for the freedom of the seas and upholding global peace. What are your thoughts on this bold stand? Should the world do more to support smaller nations in the face of coercive tactics? The answer could shape the future of maritime security for decades to come. Thank you for tuning into our channel. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global issues.